Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to NDISCO'S Village Meeting Podcast. Today, we are stepping into episode 15, series 2. And this is a continuation of our discussions from the last episode. We started with looking into um, how everybody else sees Nigerians in diaspora. We're going to leave off the negative part for now. We'll come back to that in maybe a distant episode. But now we are going to enjoy the accolades that are bestowed on Nigerians as being very successful, doing so well in the diaspora. It doesn't matter the continent, whether it's Asia, the North America one, Australia, Europe, you name it. Um, they are doing well, at least, if nothing else, academically, and also in various settings of the workplace. They really work hard and give their best. And people are asking, why is that? How do they come about um, coming from thousands and thousands of miles away from home as immigrants to establish? Some of them, like we learned the other day, that some of them came, the first groups came to, get some knowledge and go back to implement what they've learned. Then we have those who came and, stayed because they loved the ambience of the environment and all that. And then the next generation that came and found out that they couldn't fit in again, going back to whence they came from. And so they stayed and helped the environment they find themselves. Then the next generation came because there was nothing to go back to from whence they came. And that generation now has the next generation that they, either gave birth to here, brought along, adopted, and all that. And these ones are being raised here, and they're beginning to have their own children. So, no matter what the generation is or whichever group is, one thing is agreed upon that they are all doing very well, and in most cases, focused. I am going to continue to base this discussion on the book I wrote a few years ago that is titled Raising an African Child in America from My Perspective as an Immigrant Nigerian Mom. So, and I also shared from the last episode that it is very going to be very difficult to group all Africans under my discussion. So, my awareness is to have everyone else in all the rest of the African nations asking themselves if the shoe fits of what others are saying about us, how they look. But I know I am going to be able to speak on behalf of Nigerians, the whole of the many states or many cultures and the diverse regions. But I'm not even going to be able to go in depth in all those, but settle on those things that are common to all of us. The reason why um, Nigerians being part of Africa succeed, that Nigerians being Africans succeed in diaspora and are doing well. So, stepping away from what we reviewed the other day about who the Africans really are who are in the diaspora, what stages are we in at the moment? And we ended up um, talking about um, who we are and differentiating that from who we're not. But we agreed to continue to explore this topic and find out why or what has made us excel. What is it that we do that others don't do or that people are asking to emulate? I will share with you that my little book that is very few pages, but has chapters, like I told you, can expand each chapter into a full-blown book. I was surprised that higher institutions of learning, especially the African studies, share my book as a resource to the students to look at and study. And I can't believe how many people writing their dissertations or um, thesis, master's level, have referenced my book or shared my book. And I have been able to, proudly um, sit as a reader for two of these students doing their doctorate in various institutions. So that told me there's something here, but I'm going to try to leverage this and explain the point that I was trying to talk about in the book. My book is not going to, or what we are talking about here is not the book answering the question, why are we doing well? But it's a reflection of when your child is doing well, there is something you as a parent is doing or did. And in so doing, we are also asking, are there some things we can replicate or the world can borrow from? We don't know it yet. But we're doing what we're doing. Like I would tell the young ones, your parents did the best they could with what they had or what they have. But then we got to meet the young ones halfway because they are now growing up in an environment that we never grew up in. So we don't see all the facets of the things to see. So today we are going to dabble into one of those aspects that I think um, made the Africans unique, especially the Nigerians, unique in their focus, in their pursuit of excellence in diaspora. The first aspect is character building. Okay. Again, my name is Dr. Marcellina M.OPARAOJI. I'm also your hostess, or host, like some people call me, in this program. Again, the focus is African culture and society, and we try to also have whatever topic we're discussing to also be beneficial to the Africans both in the homestead as well as those in the diaspora. But this question is really, or this response is based on diaspora ones, but we're going to tap into those, yeah, at the homestead as well. So, what is character building? Character building is just going to focus on the individual, the making of this, the molding of the individual to do the best they can do. Yesterday, or the other day, sorry, not yesterday, in the last episode, we looked at raising a child in all its facets: academic, psychology, mental, educational, and all that. It's all in one. So, one of the aspects of that molding is character, the building of the character. And so, the typical Nigerian, the typical African, will always sit on or tap into this African um, uh, proverb. Um, it takes a whole village to raise a child. This is the approach they use in almost every aspect. They are trying to raise this child. But we also have questions about this approach. But let's dig in. Character building for a Nigerian immigrant parent is the core of raising a child anywhere, including diaspora. This is really taken seriously, as raising a child no doubt requires time and effort. They make the effort, but time sometimes is heavy, because these are also immigrant parents who are trying to eke out living. They work round the clock sometimes, most of them, trying to make ends meet, as well as taking care of those, the homestead. So they are really torn apart sometimes from taking the care of the children, doing the work, and also taking care of themselves. So that is what it is all about. But despite all that is sitting on their shoulders, they make the effort to really mold the character of this young one. As I say, charity begins at home. So the Nigerian immigrant parent, and I don't care what tribe it is, whether it's Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, or Efik, any other ones, they try as much as possible to start early to instill the values that themselves were raised on. Okay. And it doesn't matter whatever the culture is. Yes, we have differences in, tongue and tribes, but raising a child is raising a child in the Nigerian sense. They try to instill onto their children at a younger age. And the fact about that is that they don't want these children to encounter competing values, you know, um, before they get to school age, okay, as well as in the village. And we're going to explain what the village, because I put that in quotes there or in parentheses. So the really idea is to mold from infancy to the school age, so that when they get to school, they are able to tackle anything else thrown at them. Okay, so that's the approach. So they try to go, like I said, takes a village to raise a child. It takes not only the outside village, but the inside village. What do I mean by that? The mother, the father, the uncles, and the extended family part. Those people around, the brothers and sisters, everybody has a way to tap into helping this child become the best they can be, and according to um, the values that are held, whether it's religious, whether it's manner of eating, manner of dressing, the language, and all that, and also being able to, inculcate respect and much more. Okay. Um, what is the village? That is the question, and this the adage, uh, which has origin in Africa, has been cited by so many all over the world, including Hillary Rodham Clinton, the 67th United States Secretary of State, um, who um, was also, or is, the second wife, second president, the wife of the second president. Let me say that again. Hillary Rodham Clinton is the wife of the 42nd president of the United States, William J. Clinton. So when she published her book, um, when she was trying to present the vision for the children of America and their family values, she borrowed the adage, or the proverb, um, it takes a village, and other lessons children teach us. That is the title. It was borrowed from Nigeria. I think this um, proverb, being West African, is also borrowed. Other African proverbs also borrow from this one. It takes a village. It's like, for example, you have people say, one knee does not bring up a child. One hand does not nurse a child. All of these express the same values, and the sentiment. Okay. Other similar phrases include, a child does not grow up only in a single home. A child belongs not to one parent or home. Regardless of a child's biological parent, its upbringing belongs to the community. So this African overview or worldview that emphasizes the value of family and family relationships, parental care, self-sacrificing concern for others, all of that is what makes up what we are looking at as what the village is governing. Sharing, hospitality. And these have been found to be so close to the biblical worldview um, as we see in the scriptures, related to unity and cooperation. We can find that in Ecclesiastes. Um, and, you know, it includes a mother's self-sacrificing love in Isaiah. And a certain Reverend Joseph Healy actually talked about all this. Family members, including the extended ones, friends, neighbors, all constitute the village. They assist in raising a child. It is a community effort. So when a child's character is being built for the outside world, it starts from home. Okay? The communal effort in raising a child is echoed in not only the African culture or Nigerian culture, it is echoed in other parts of the world. For example, a Chinese proverb says a child's life is like a piece of paper, okay, on which every person leaves a mark. This also denotes the belief that raising a child is the responsibility of many, not just one individual. It takes a whole village to raise a child, thus reflects a reality, sense of African immigrants. That's what they grew up in, this kind of approach, and can easily relate to. This is what they relate to, and that's what they try to infuse in their children. Okay. The overall goal of this is to have a direction, an idea of where we want to really shepherd this child from what we know as parents. Okay. If we ever achieved an award for doing something great, we are applauded by everyone in the village. So also is if we do something really not so bright, it reflects on the village. This is the thought of the African and the Nigerian. Okay, the responsibilities is to are there to assist in maintaining the moral well-being of this child and also the community, because whatever a child is or what they become reflects on the community. And starting with the parents. So, with the exhibition of such collective social responsibility by that village, in quotation, the African child then knows that they are loved and protected in their respective communities. So, these are still the top. Okay? Um, let's examine the meaning of the word village. It is, according to the African thinking, is a settlement of people, most of whom can trace their biological origin to the same ancestry. People in a village are children of or descendants of a particular ancestry, and in some cases, these children come together to share a common name or common attributes. Such common name can refer to a group of people who collectively migrated: the Igbo people, Ndibo, the Yoruba people, the, Mbise people, the Amuzi people. It depends on how you want to categorize them. And sometimes there are some entities within entities. So an Amuzi or a Kurazu person, or somebody from Ondo, a little village there, can still fit in a bigger cog. So that is what is meant. So the village is really, the village expands. It's not just what one person will see it to be. An example of this actual tracing of villages or ancestry can be seen on television series today, as directed by documentary filmmakers, literary minds. And we can also look at Professor Henry Louis Gates Jr., who traces people's ancestry back. He is that of African American research at Harvard University. He talks about village as well. Okay. While we don't want to go in this episode or more into details of ancestry and patterns of migration, it is important, though, to emphasize that the single commonest trait of people in a village is their common ancestry. Think about that. Let it sink. Within a village, there are interwoven incidents of cousins, nephews, uncles, nieces, which constitute classical extended families. We must remember that. And our children, even today, they complain there are too many uncles and too many aunts, and we don't know who is who. Yeah, because they are mixing the environmental culture with the culture their parents brought along, that mean two different things. So they teach us that sometimes this same uncle or nephew or cousin, they can get married too, but they were confused from the beginning because everybody is an uncle, everybody is a brother, and all that, and they don't know the line of demarcation. We, the adults, we understand what we call those when we brought them, because that was the connotation we gave them back home. And this is where I want our parents, our immigrant parents, to think twice before they try to enforce it. They have the best for the children in mind, but sometimes the outcome doesn't fit what, the benefits or the one they wanted to derive from that. So that's a good example of that. In such enclaves, offenses like incest are significant abomination, and these sometimes happen without clarifying the line between all these. With such common ancestry, people in a village believe in communal sharing of blessings and challenges. So everyone becomes his or her neighbor's keeper. In this regard, there will be no second thoughts in rebuking or offending a child in the village without prior reference or permission from the child's parent. And this is what is typical of our character building. Anybody can jump in to rebuke a child who is doing wrong or doing something not that is untoward the culture. And for a long time, we could do that. If you look at the first groups that came to the US, for example, as immigrants, it's a little bit removed from the second, from the third, from the fourth, and so on. Because the culture that we thought we brought along, some of them clash with the ones that our young ones are living through, no matter how we try to really implement them in the homes before they hit the outside. So that is something to think about. But so far, whatever we've been doing have been helping up to the ones now that are beginning to have their own children. The logic in doing all this is that the child um, who commits grievous offense somehow, um, another parent can correct. It's a typical illustration of how it took a village in Africa, Nigeria, to raise a child. The nearest equivalence of this um, is initiated by the Jewish. You could see some of this happening in Jewish environments. Chinese people have that as well. Um, Actually, a Chinese lady, I forgot the name now, also wrote something to that effect of how crazy they could be, the mothers, in insisting on some of their culture on the children. So it's not just the Africans that do that, but the outcome is what we're talking about. Italian people have that, and their ancestries is all of them are being propagated as well. Settlements that now this is why people are now talking about settlements like Chinatown, Germantown, Little Italy, African Village in Chicago, and many other places. I mentioned Little Ethiopia the other day. What are people doing when they establish that? They are trying to establish a village like we have them back in Africa, a village where people can call their own. And this is why when you go to Chinatown, it feels like you're in China. They're doing it in Germantown. It feels like you see what they belong to them every corner. And so this is what people are trying to recreate away from home. Okay. These settlements often would hold neighborhood meetings to be able to know each other, the different parents, the children, extended families, and by so doing, they're considerably trying to improve their cultural and social solidarity that are and affiliations that could be lost without coming together. And when you look at for example, the Nigerian community and most other African communities, there are gatherings that are held. Um, Meetings that also go back to the ancestry we are looking at. You see people having, this group meeting or that and all that. All of that is to try to get a trace of the community effort or community living that was or is still rampant back home, to the outside world, to the environment that these parents immigrated to. Okay. Um, the settlements must be differently, you know, contrasted from the urban. And this is why, even in some cases, most of the, I shared with everyone in the episode 14, where the first people that came settled in urban areas, and that's where they were given early the college admissions. Those were the areas that started giving example Africans admissions to come to school. So what happened was that people will finish school and they will settle along those areas. But as time went on, people now, when they have completed school and decided to stay, will look for jobs and then move to the suburbs. But it's not happening with every one of them. So in America, for example, the foreign-born African immigrants, like some of us, raising children, we would like to replicate this love and protection that we had from our parents, similar to what the village provided and our parents provided in diaspora. Some are succeeding in doing that, and some are failing woefully. And there are reasons for all that. But the good news is that the percentage of success is way higher than that of failure. And this is why other people see us as successful, because the percentage of implementing those aspects that we think of are happening. But also, it depends on when the group that came full swing without the spreading of more um, um, of people going to areas where they don't come encounter that much with the African culture, but then they are immersed in other people's culture. There is confusion. And this is why sometimes I say to people, our children are at crossroads, because what the ones now are experiencing is a little bit different from the ones that are a little bit different from what they once in generation two or three experienced. The world is changing every day. Okay. Um, and so life is a lot easier when one is a part of a network of family and friends, community, neighborhood, and all that. Parents bring their children to live in supportive communities where people look out for each other and support each other. I shared the other day that my book started from hanging out with young ones from the elementary school, where some of them were even in kindergarten then. Um, but that was a communal effort. Parents saying, "Oh, we want you to really, can you take our kid for some hours and all that?" And I was happy to do that. I would take them, and instead of sitting idly at home and watching TV, no, you bring your book, and we can sit out in the park and we read, and then you play and we read, or we talk, or we go to museums or the library and have fun. But the essence of that is to also, you cannot curse while you're with me. You cannot say any other raw words that you say outside when with me. And some people would think, oh, you are so strict on them. Yeah, I didn't think I was strict. I was thinking of what my own mother will say to me. You can say this or that. So I am trying to impact that on the next people next to me, like, we got to be constructive. We got to be, respectful of each other and of me, your auntie. So little did we know that we are imparting some things. And when they go home to their parents, parents will sometimes ask, "What did you do?" My child is a change sometimes when they stay the weekend. I said, "No, I'm just doing what exactly the way I was brought up to say, do the dishes, you know. When it's time to go to bed, you go into bed. But you are free to talk, ask questions, be yourself." And maybe that's what they wanted. They wanted to feel free, but at the same time have directions. So that's what I do to mine, and that's what I'm doing to others. And that is just an example of the village raising the child. Okay? So in a smaller picture of that, when raising a child, every member of the family is involved. Okay, mom and dad will provide food and shelter. Older brothers and sisters assist to watch over the younger ones, including showing them the right way to do their assigned chores as they themselves were taught. So it's not just, like culture, is also assisting the day-to-day activities that everybody does, whether you are African or non-African, everybody does that. But what the African family does or the Nigerian family does is to insist that everybody has a part to play in the family. And that's the way we do that. The parents are available to reinforce and reassure. So some people may look at this though as, well, did you bring these children up to do your work in the house? No, that's not the point. The point is, if we don't teach them, they don't learn. So we also imparting such and try to make it like equitable so that everybody will learn. One of the things we missed though is we went along the masculine and feminine way in some cases. So you see some girls that, they're delegated to cooking and taking care of the young, while the male are delegated to something else. But then we forget after some time that the male will also fend for themselves, which is something new in the environment they're finding themselves. That back home, no matter how old you get, somebody is taking care of you cooking as a male, but the environment is changing even back home. That here you go to college or you live on your own for some time before you get married, you got to feed. You can't eat outside all the time. So sometimes we miss the point of teaching them to cook, the male counterparts. And we forget to, you know, teach the young girls how to do some masculine jobs. Some of us had to learn how to really change tires um, as young ladies because it was necessary to do that, to learn some things like that. Uh, so not everybody is open to such, but that's the ideal stuff people go through, but that's not what we're experiencing today. So um, many will argue that such a practice of having everybody do stuff in the house could it's designate for girls and get designate for boys could perpetuate gender discrimination um, involved insisting that the male um, gets involved in household domestics and all that. No, today we got to look at all those things again because of the change in ways of living. Okay. When friends, we need to also recognize that when friends and extended family members are involved in raising a child, um, everybody enjoys the privilege of objective feedback on the child's behavior. And so this may be what is experienced in the schools or at the workplace. People take this out there to be obedient. One of the things we'll talk about as the time goes on is the confusion that gets into this young, poor child's head. At home, due to lack of respect, you don't look your parents in the eyes when they talk to you or when you talk to them or any elder actually around you. But then you leave the home and go to the school and the teacher thinks you're lying or you're rude for not looking in their eyes to speak or to talk. So some of these things are things they encounter, but still they took much of these to go out. And some of the things now, some of us who talk out there try to share to the outside world is that the African culture, there's nothing wrong in that, in not looking you in the eyes or that, but that is exactly how they are brought up. That is part of our culture. But we have some work to do to teach our children that you could not look at your parents at home, but when you get to the office, you can look somebody in the eyes or in the schools. And some of them are beginning to get that. But it's still a lot of, but that's why, the African children, they battle a whole lot. That's a whole lot they have, okay, to deal with. So this is the essence of also the village we're talking about. Okay. Um, One of the things, the stories I wanted to share was there was this uh, daughter, a friend of ours, whose daughter had planned to join a sorority, for example, as a fresh person in college. At a point during the rigorous initiation process, um, the daughter started, having doubts about some of the sorority pledges she was asked to participate in order to be initiated into the sorority. So one particular one had to do with pledging um, to the sorority symbol, which is in conflict with her religious upbringing. Again, we're going back to the character building back home, back in the family. And for troubled, you know, she didn't want to go to her parents, because then she would divulge by by way of their bringing what the sorority is all about deeply, which they have sworn to them not to do. So they couldn't do that. They couldn't go to any of their relatives because, again, they would tell the truth. So what this young lady did was stepped out to a church nearby, um, where she thought her questions could be answered. And by a religious person, a pastor there who had nothing to do with her own denomination. And she has no idea who this person is from Adam, but that the church has been by their neighborhood, and she's seen this person go by a few times. So she ventured in and asked her questions. And lo and behold, the pastor was able to not mince words with her and asked her back some questions about the conflict of her in her head and that of her religion. And to cut a long story short, at the end, she decided she didn't want to join the sorority because, as again, the religious upbringing in her home, sharing with her that you have only one God and every other thing you don't pledge to. So this is just an example um, of what a village can do. So that pastor became part of her village, despite the fact that it's not even part of her family. So all this that I have been sharing here is a way that character is built. And this character not only showcases in the house, it goes the next step to the schools. And what they can do at home, they don't do in schools. And it carries, and that hard work instilled in the home and all that carries also to the workplace where they work hard. And there are certain things you don't do because, parents have really told you not to do that. And so this is one of the reasons why the Nigerian kid, the African kid, takes all these to the next level and do what they do. And that is the confidence that is instilled in them that there are certain things, if you work hard, you will excel. And if you don't work hard, some of us will not only rebuke you, the outside person away from your family, part of your village, will rebuke you and bring you back to square. Now, there's always another side to the coin. Some have also agreed that there are great benefits to a child being raised by the village, but others have also agreed that there are not so good things about the village. And in this case, we are talking about the village in quotes, the village in the environment the child finds him or herself in diaspora. And there are so many aspects to this village that influence the child in their environment. Okay. There are other parts of the village like the gang, the drug infested aspects. These are all villages, Um, but some of them are not so good for the child. So it depends on what village you're talking about. We are talking about the village where the culture is based, where the cultural aspects are being brought up to also help in other values that the child is born with. Okay. Um, we see also that character building, um, like we said before, is really the core. And what the child says is what the child hears at home. And this is why sometimes when children throw tantrum outside or make noise in restaurants, in the churches, the African parent doesn't take it lightly. They really are bad. They will deal with this child, in a way that some other cultures may not. Why? Because we Africans think that what a child is doing out there, like I said, reflects on their upbringing. It is what they learned from home, which may be contrary to actually what we teach them. So it could be interpreted in so many different ways. So um, we still don't spare the rod. to, we don't spoil the child either. Um, yes, the society that people live in diaspora has made it difficult to really instill that discipline in the child. The laws now are being quoted, and some of them are being given the wrong um, um, information as to how to deal and what not to deal. So some of them calling the cops for even when the parents tell them to shush or not to touch this or that, and they keep going. But the cops are beginning to also understand, especially in when they are in the African Latin communities, that did you do what your parents said you did? Yeah. Okay, don't call us again, or we were gonna, get you up there for disrupting the peace. So they are all getting the picture now. But this is where I encourage all of us to understand what the village is all about. Okay, because that's where the anchor is on character building. Um, and I say to some parents who run away from that fact, um, and some of them have um, the right to stay away, because some of our young ones also attack when they don't understand. Again, it goes back to the upbringing. Majority of the African families, if an adult says to them, this or that is not good because your parents, are not here, doesn't mean you could do X, Y, Z. They still will listen. But there are those who did not get that um, uh, kind of character building in their homes, that still will roll up their eyes when an adult says something in public that they're doing without their parents being there. Some of us don't care who you are. We will, approach you and say something because we still believe in the village raising a child. And some of them know. And actually, my experience personally is that when they know that you are such a person, they even try not to do whatever they are going to do that is untoward our culture and our upbringing. They hide from you. So I encourage parents, if it's your child or not your child, to say something. That's how they come to you, closer to you, to really get some feedback if they're not getting them from their parents. Okay. So we're going to conclude this, and I hope that we have, you know, discussed a little bit or shedded some light on why character building is one of the reasons why um, African young ones, or that grew up into adults, really doing well in diaspora. And some may say, why are you talking about children here? Because the young shall grow. The young is the one that grows into these people that are now heading offices and all that. And these young ones, or these, once young adults now doing well, where these statistics are being, collected from, they were young. And it's the same young African immigrants here that molded them to what they are now. But the worries that we have, uh, what will become of the ones that are being raised by those children that we have born here, the next generation, um, that did not grow up with the values that their parents grew up in. They have all types of mixed values that and cultures that they picked up from the environment that they are born in. We'll wait to see what happens. But again, the photos speak. Um, Again, look at my picture there. I keep reading so many things in this. The character, type of things we built into our children is to make them free. They are free to run around like those children in the pictures. They exercise their own, initiatives and all. That's what they, but with limits. So those who came bearing what, uh, you know, character their parents instilled in them back home, back in Africa before they came out here as immigrants. Um, those are allowing their children to flex a little bit, but still trying to instill those old cultural values. But some are doing that with a lot of conflicts, the conflicts of the culture that they are finding themselves in, that the children are all engaged in all over the place, and the ones that the parents want to instill, which sometimes conflict. So let's look at this summary, and this is what all I'm talking about that the parents are trying to do. Sean Platt, who is a writer, dad, blogger, had this to say, and his thinking was actually in the line of Nigerian immigrant parent when what they think when they talk about raising a child, the child that becomes talked about as doing well in diaspora in whatever setting. And I bet what I just said here is also what upholds in Europe. African parents, immigrants, Nigerian parents, immigrants, anywhere else in the world. This is all in their reflection. And I quote, he says, nature and nurture are in a never ending battle to claim the disposition of our children. While it is true that the apple rarely tumbles too far from the tree, it is also true that there are a multitude of things we as parents can do to safeguard the childhoods of our children, limit their exposure to the more damaging elements the world will see fit to introduce in time, and do our best to raise a healthy and happy child. We might not be able to help the variety of our branches, but we are the ones who control the nutrients in their soil and the sunlight in their sky. Think about that quote. Think deeply about that. That our role as parents, Nigerian immigrants, African immigrants, is to do all within our power. Of course, we're going to lose some along the way, but woe be us if we don't do the best we can. And that's what that's all about. And that is what the African immigrant is doing by character building. So, this is what we have to conclude on today. And in the next episode, episode 16, we will talk about another area that may have contributed immensely to answer that question of why Africans are doing well in diaspora. So hopefully character building, the way we understand it today, has a huge part to play, and it did, that gets them, these young ones, focused. These young ones, know what is needed out there to survive, to live. And there's a reason why, like one of my friends asked the other time, why is it that when we hear of all these things happening, the Nigerian children upon our population here, they're not in the news all the time as being killed, being doing that, all that. And I said, because of what we're trying to instill in them before they leave the house. I remember one of the things I always said to my son, and I always sang it as a song. When you see a policeman, when they stop you, they are your friends. Say hello. You may have been driving fast or whatever, but listen to them. They're not crazy. Yes, some of them may be, whatever else we have in mind, but I will assure you that if you respect them, they will respect you back. When you start flexing your muscle, it's maybe when they start really being rough on you. And majority of the time, I have not heard our young ones get in such trouble. Um, they really understand. They got the note that you don't do stuff that will make somebody else, react. whether it's your parent or another adult out there, everybody deserves respect one way or the other. And that may have worked in their favor of focusing, knowing their rights, being confident in who they are, and that tells a story. Thank you for listening. This is your lead discussant, Dr. Marcellina and Ndidi. Appreciating your being with me. And in the next episode, we're going to continue with part 3 of this in the next episode. And I ask you to please share this with everybody else that you know. Subscribe to my YouTube channel or page and to my Facebook one as well, to my other social media outlets. Okay? And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.